I was 23 when it really hit me that my family didn't see me the way I saw them. I'm Josh, and just a few months before this story began, I had walked across the stage with my engineering degree in one hand and about $78,000 in student debt hanging over my head like a guillotine. But I smiled that day, because my twin brother, Caleb, walked across that same stage right after me. We'd survived 4 years of late nights, terrible group projects, grumpy professors, and caffeine-induced heart palpitations together. And as far as I knew, we were in the same boat. Or so I thought. We both grew up in a modest home with two very practical parents. That's how they described themselves: frugal, wise with money, always looking at the bigger picture. My mom worked at a local insurance agency, and my dad ran his own small HVAC repair business out of a rusted white van that was older than I was. They weren't rich, but we never went hungry or missed a bill. Still, from early on, they made it clear that if Caleb and I wanted to go to college, we'd need to pull our own weight. "We'll help when we can," Dad would say, "but don't expect a free ride. We don't believe in handouts." Fine. I respected that. I took it to heart. I busted my tail in high school to land scholarships. I worked summers at the local hardware store, took tutoring gigs on campus, even picked up a graveyard shift as a desk clerk at a budget motel during junior year, just to keep up. I got used to scraping by. Ramen wasn't just a college trope, it was dinner most nights. Caleb, to his credit, was no slacker. He studied hard, did internships, and earned his degree too. But where I had always been the quiet one, the planner, the one who made spreadsheets for fun and never spent more than $8 on a haircut, Caleb was different. Not reckless, but more charismatic. Charming. People liked him. Professors, girls, our neighbors growing up. He just had that kind of energy that pulled people in. And our parents? They ate it up. Looking back, maybe I should have seen the signs sooner. Subtle little things. When we were kids and both got participation trophies for soccer, my mom put his on the mantle. Mine ended up on a dusty shelf in the hallway. At Christmas, his stocking always bulged a bit more. When we got our SAT scores, my parents barely reacted when I cracked 1400, but when Caleb hit 1250, Mom called the whole family. I chalked it up to Caleb being more outgoing. Easier to celebrate. I didn't need the attention anyway. I had goals. But it was graduation weekend that planted the first real seed of something deeper. Something darker. Our school held a joint ceremony for the engineering school, and since we both graduated magna cum laude, we got to sit in the front row. I remember looking over at Caleb during the speeches. He was beaming. So was I. For years of sweat and stress, and we made it. When we tossed our caps in the air, I swear time slowed for a moment. I'd done everything right. Everything they'd asked. I couldn't wait to take the next step. After the ceremony, we met up with our family outside. Dad had brought his old DSLR and was already snapping photos of Caleb with Mom. I stood off to the side, tassel dangling, heart pounding, holding my diploma like it was made of gold. Eventually, Mom called me over and hugged me. "Proud of you, honey," she said with a quick pat on the back. Then she turned to Caleb. "You did it, sweetie. My engineer." She grabbed his face and kissed both cheeks. Dad gave him a bear hug that nearly knocked his cap off. "Knew you could do it, son. You're gonna do great things." I stood there, trying to laugh it off. Maybe they were just caught up in the moment. Maybe I was overthinking it. We took a few group pictures. Then they said they'd made dinner reservations. I figured it would be just the family. Us four, maybe some aunts and uncles. But when we got to the restaurant, it hit me like a slap. The place was decorated. I'm talking balloons, a "Congrats, Caleb" banner hanging across the back wall, and a cake with his face printed on it in icing. No joke, his face. There were about 20 people there. Extended family, old neighbors, even a couple of Caleb's high school friends I hadn't seen in years. My name wasn't on the banner. Not even a small "Josh and Caleb" scribbled in the corner. It was his show. I laughed. I had to. I told myself, it's fine. Maybe they just picked his name for convenience. But when we sat down, Mom clinked her glass and stood up to make a toast. "To our sweet boy, Caleb, the first engineer in our family." I blinked. My face must have gone numb. First? I was an engineer too. We were the same age. Same degree. Same school. But no one said a word. Not even Caleb. That night, I kept quiet. I smiled through it all, ate a slice of his face cake, and nodded while our great-uncle told Caleb how he always knew he'd go places. When we got home, I tried to bring it up with Mom. Just gently. Hey, I said, we both graduated, you know. Why did it feel like only Caleb mattered tonight? She looked at me like I'd said something dumb. Oh, Josh, don't be like that. Caleb's had such a tough time these past few years. You're always so independent. I figured you didn't want a big fuss. Independent. That word again. The one they always used to justify doing less for me. I didn't press. I went back to my room and stared at my bank account. Just over $400. My loan payments would start in 6 months. The next morning, I overheard them talking in the kitchen while I was grabbing my phone from the dining table. Dad's voice was low, but I heard enough. So that's the last payment. Caleb's officially debt-free. Mom responded, took some juggling, but it was worth it. He deserves a clean slate. I froze. Debt-free? What? I'd sat next to Caleb every night we compared tuition bills. We both took out loans. I knew he had more than I did. How the hell was he debt-free? I didn't confront them right away. I just walked out the door with my heart in my throat. I needed to know more. I needed to be sure before I said anything. So I asked Caleb the next day, casually, "Hey man, did mom and dad help you with your loans?" He blinked, then smiled sheepishly. Oh, yeah, they covered the rest a few weeks ago. Said they wanted me to start fresh, you know? I nodded, said cool, walked away. That night, in the privacy of my room, I cried. Not because of the money, but because I realized something that changed the way I looked at my parents forever. They didn't forget about me. They just didn't think I was worth the help. And that was only the beginning. I tried to let it go. I really did. I told myself maybe they were just trying to give Caleb a boost. Maybe they saw him as the one who needed help more. I mean, sure, I'd always been the independent one, the quiet one, the kid who got his first job at 14 and didn't ask for much. Maybe they just thought I could handle it. But that didn't make it right. And the more I tried to swallow it, the more it curdled inside me. The next few weeks after graduation were strange. Tense, but only for me. Everyone else carried on like things were completely normal. My parents were still calling Caleb their little genius. And Caleb, well, he was suddenly glowing. He moved back into his childhood bedroom and spent his days lounging around, talking about taking a few months to breathe before job hunting. My old room. I didn't move back in. I couldn't afford to. I was crashing in a shared apartment with 2 guys from school, paying rent out of what little savings I had left from working the front desk at that rundown motel. I even picked up weekend shifts again, just to keep myself afloat. One night in July, I came home from work around midnight and opened Instagram to unwind. First thing on my feed, a post from my mom. A selfie of her and Caleb, both smiling at a high-end steakhouse. The caption? Celebrating our brilliant son and his debt-free future. My heart sank. I stared at the photo for a long time. No mention of me. No tag. Not even a passing "our sons" or "our graduates." Just Caleb. The next day, I called her. "Hey mom," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I saw your post." She laughed. "Oh, did you? Isn't that place beautiful?" Caleb picked it. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Just wondering, was that for something specific?" "Oh, just a little dinner to celebrate. He's been under so much pressure, poor thing. We just thought he deserved a treat." I pressed my lips together. "You know I'm still paying off my loans, right? Like all of them." There was a pause. Then her voice changed, tight, like I was burdening her. "Josh, we've been over this. You never asked us for help. You always acted like you had it under control. We didn't want to insult you." "I didn't ask," I said, my voice shaking. "Because you always said we had to earn everything. Because I thought we were all playing by the same rules. You're being dramatic." That's when I hung up. And after that, things got colder. My dad stopped answering my texts when I asked if I could borrow a set of tools to do a side gig fixing someone's AC. Caleb, meanwhile, got a brand new toolkit for his future job as an early graduation present. They made a whole show of it. Posted pictures, gave a speech about how he was destined for greatness. At Thanksgiving, they introduced him to a family friend who ran a construction firm and said, "This is the one you want on your team. Bright, driven, debt-free." I wasn't even invited that year. They told me there were too many people coming over and not enough space at the table. My roommate made instant mashed potatoes and split a rotisserie chicken with me in our tiny kitchen. I said I didn't mind. But that night, I sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling fan until my eyes burned. Something inside me was cracking, and I didn't know how much longer I could fake being okay. Then came the betrayal that snapped it all in two. January rolled around. Caleb still hadn't gotten a job, still living at home, still somehow treated like royalty. I was juggling 3 part-time gigs, freelance CAD work, weekend motel shifts, and a tutoring side hustle just to make my loan payments and eat. I was drained, physically and emotionally, but I was managing. Barely. That month, I got an email from a design firm I'd applied to 6 months prior. They'd had an unexpected opening and wanted to interview me the following week. It wasn't flashy, but it was steady pay, full-time, with benefits. The kind of break I needed. I called Mom, a small part of me still wanting to share the win. Maybe it would remind them I existed. She answered on the second ring. "Hello." "Hey," I said, cautiously upbeat. "I just heard from Arcus Design Group. They're scheduling me for an interview next week." She paused. "Arcus? Isn't that where Caleb applied last month?" My stomach twisted. "He applied there?" "Oh yes. He mentioned it over dinner the other night. He really liked them." I didn't say anything, just listened. Then she added, "That's great though. Maybe you'll both end up working together." I felt like someone had poured ice water down my back. The next day, I checked in with the recruiter. She told me the opening had already been filled, last minute. They'd extended an offer to another applicant just the night before. I asked if she could share who got the job. She hesitated. Then, a Caleb Henson, said he was referred by his father. I don't even remember what I said after that. I just remember sitting there in my rickety desk chair, blinking at the wall, while something cold and sharp settled into my chest. My father had referred Caleb to a job I applied for, a job I'd told them about months ago. They didn't just steal an opportunity, they handed it, gift-wrapped, to my brother. I didn't speak to them for weeks after that. I couldn't. I didn't trust myself not to scream. But that wasn't the end. In March, I got a text from Caleb. "Hey bro, just wanted to say thanks. They said they found my resume because of the job portal you recommended. I really appreciate it." I stared at that text like it was a knife sticking out of my gut. He had no idea. No clue that I was the one who'd sent him the job portal link months ago. No idea that I'd mentioned Arcus to our dad first. No idea how many nights I'd spent editing and re-editing my portfolio just to get noticed. And still, I responded, "No problem. Congrats." I hated how easy it was to lie. By April, Caleb had his job, his apartment, funded in part by a generous moving gift from our parents, and a shiny new car. I was still living off rice, still riding the bus with a laptop that crashed every few hours, still repaying loans for the same degree. One afternoon, while I was on campus tutoring a freshman in thermodynamics, I overheard a conversation outside the study hall. My dad's voice. He was talking to one of the professors. "Yeah, Caleb's really made something of himself. Always knew he'd go far. We're just proud we could support him. Josh. Oh, he's around. We help where we can, but he's always been more of a solo act." That word again. Solo act. I almost laughed. Almost. That night, I stared at the ceiling, feeling something shift in me. Not anger. Not even pain. Just a quiet click. Like a gear falling into place. They had made it clear, over and over, in 100 small and big ways, that I didn't matter as much. That Caleb was the golden child. That I could work, scrape, hustle, and bleed, and it would never be enough to earn what he got just by existing. They thought I'd stay quiet. That I'd always smile and say, "It's fine." That I'd sit on the sidelines and clap for my brother's parades. They were wrong. I started planning the moment I saw the invite. It was mid-June. I came home to a card stuck in the crack of my door. A thick, glittery envelope. The front said, "You're invited," in big golden letters. Inside it read, "Join us as we celebrate Caleb's debt-free future and bright new beginning." There was a venue name, a date, a time. No mention of me. Not a word about how I'd been paying off my loans while they handed him a clean slate. Not a word about the job opportunity they stole. Not a single acknowledgement that we had walked across the same graduation stage not even a year ago. It was the final straw. But it was also the perfect opportunity. Because if they wanted to throw a celebration, then I'd give them something real to celebrate. And that night, I started building the surprise. I didn't RSVP to the party. I didn't text Caleb. I didn't call my parents. I didn't even tell my roommates. I just stared at that glittery invitation, this loud, self-congratulatory celebration of everything I wasn't given, and I let the silence settle around me. Not the kind of silence that comes with peace, but the kind that rings in your ears when you've been underwater too long. The kind that reminds you, no one's coming to pull you out. You either drown or you kick until you break the surface yourself. The week after I got that invite, I hit my lowest point. My tutoring jobs dried up with the end of the semester. The motel cut hours, citing budget restructuring, which meant I was down to maybe one shift a week, if that. My bank account dipped below $60, and I still had 2 weeks until rent. My laptop finally died for good, just black-screened on me in the middle of a project. I was working on some freelance CAD sketches for a guy who ghosted me 2 days after I sent him the files. No payment, no reply, just gone. I pawned my old DSLR camera to pay rent. The same camera I'd bought in high school after saving for months. Photography used to be my way of escaping, of feeling in control, framing the world how I wanted to see it. Watching that lens slide away behind the pawn shop counter felt like losing a piece of myself. And through all of it, my phone kept lighting up. Photos of Caleb's new apartment. Videos of him popping champagne with our parents. Mom's Facebook post calling him a living example of what hard work and support can achieve. Support. That word made me sick. I don't remember the exact moment I broke. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming. No walls punched. No tear-streaked monologue into the mirror. It was just a Tuesday afternoon, and I was eating instant oatmeal with a plastic spoon because we were out of clean dishes, and I realized I hadn't spoken out loud in almost 3 days. That scared me more than anything. So I stood up, washed the dishes, and went for a walk. And that walk changed everything. There's this quiet street near our apartment complex, lined with tiny houses and mismatched gardens. I used to pass it all the time without thinking. But that day I slowed down. I noticed a wooden sign that said Co-op Workspaces, now leasing. Something about it pulled me in. I stepped inside. The space was nothing fancy. A few worn desks, dusty chairs, a couple of ancient printers, and an old man with Coke bottle glasses tapping away at an absurdly outdated keyboard. But the air was different. Focused. Quiet. Like everyone there had been knocked down a few times, but was still moving. The woman at the front desk, Sophie, looked up and smiled. "You here to work?" she asked. I blinked. "Honestly, I'm not sure." She tilted her head. "Then you probably are." I found out the place was pay what you can for first-timers, which, for me, meant handing over $5 and a heartfelt thank you. I didn't have a working laptop, but Sophie pointed me to a refurbished desktop in the corner that still had some fight in her. I opened a browser, logged into my ancient email account, and just started. I scrolled through old drafts, resumes, designs I'd never sent. I reread rejection letters, dug up bookmarked articles on freelance engineering work, CAD competitions, even open-source collaboration projects. And something in me clicked. Maybe I didn't need anyone to give me a clean slate. Maybe I just needed to build one from scratch. That night, I listed 3 new gigs on a freelance site I hadn't touched since college. I offered CAD designs for prototypes, cheap, fast, no frills. I reached out to a contact from school who'd mentioned doing 3D modeling for small indie robotics companies. I updated my resume, redesigned my portfolio, from memory, mostly, since my files were gone, and applied for 5 contract-based gigs. I didn't hear back for a week. Then, suddenly, 3 responses. 2 from startup founders looking for quick prototype sketches, and 1 from a guy launching a 3D printed drone parts business who needed help cleaning up his models. They weren't huge jobs, but they paid. One offered $300, the next $450. The last one said he could only afford $200 now, but would tip generously if he liked the work. I took all 3. For the next 2 months, I lived in that co-op workspace. Sophie waved me in every morning. I brought instant coffee packets and 8 PB&J sandwiches out of my backpack. I stayed until closing and biked home under the street lamps. And slowly, the job stacked up. A little money here, a referral there. Clients liked that I was fast, responsive, and didn't treat their ideas like garbage. One of the drone parts guys sent my name to a friend at a small industrial design studio. They reached out, said they liked my style, and asked if I'd be willing to join a short-term project designing custom cooling systems for outdoor tech cabinets. It paid $1,600. I stared at the email for 10 minutes before replying. By August, I had enough to replace my laptop. I picked up a used Dell with good specs and a barely noticeable scratch on the lid. It felt like freedom. I started paying down my loans faster. Just a little at first. $50 extra here, $100 there. But seeing the number shrink gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time. hope. Around that time, I started posting some of my designs on a portfolio site. Just basic stuff, before and after sketches, rendering walkthroughs, mock-ups. I didn't expect anyone to notice. But a week later, I got a message from a YouTuber who did videos on engineering hacks. He wanted someone to help design printable models for some of his tutorials. He offered $100 per design, 3 designs a week. It wasn't glamorous, but I was building momentum. And all of it, all of it, I did without a single word from my parents. Not once did I ask them for help. Not once did they offer. Caleb was too busy posting reels of his weekend ski trips and happy hours with coworkers. I watched the whole show from a distance, quiet, invisible, but not angry anymore. I was focused. My favorite moment came one morning in September. I woke up to an email titled Payment Confirmation. It was from the loan servicing company. I'd just passed the threshold where the accrued interest had been completely paid off. Every dollar I sent now went directly to the principal. That was the first time in years I stood in front of the mirror and smiled at myself without faking it. I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. But I was finally building something that was mine. And for once, I didn't feel like I was racing my brother or chasing my parents' approval. But then they came back. In early October, my dad called out of the blue. I stared at his name on the screen, thumb hovering. I hadn't heard from him in months. Not since the Arcus betrayal. I answered. "Hey Josh," he said. "How have you been?" I could hear dishes clinking in the background. "Mom, probably. Or maybe Caleb." "Been okay," I said. "Busy." He cleared his throat. "That's good. That's real good. Listen, we were wondering." There it was. The we. "We were wondering if you could come to the house this weekend. Nothing serious, just a family dinner. Your mom's been asking about you." That was new. "Why now?" I asked. He chuckled. "What do you mean, why now?" You didn't call when I was broke. Or when I lost that job. Or when I missed Thanksgiving." There was a pause. "Josh," he said, "we thought you needed space. We figured you'd reach out when you were ready." I swallowed. "Well, I didn't." Another pause. He sighed. "We just miss you, son. Caleb's doing great, but it's not the same without you." I said I'd think about it. Then hung up. The next day, I got another invitation. Same glittery font. Same obnoxiously cheerful design. This one said, "You're invited to a family celebration. Caleb's 1-year debt-free anniversary." I sat back in my chair, laughing quietly. It wasn't even sarcastic anymore. It was just absurd. They were throwing him another party. 1 year of being debt-free. Something they made happen. Something I was still fighting tooth and nail to achieve on my own, with no help, no shortcuts, and no applause. But this time, I wasn't angry, because by then, I had a plan. And I wasn't the same person who cried in his bedroom over being left out of a party. No, now, I had something better. I had leverage. I wasn't going to the party. That was never in question. What was in question, what kept me up late that night, sitting in my little rented room with the soft blue light of my laptop humming in the dark, was how much longer I could let them get away with it. Not just the favoritism, not just the betrayal, but the story they were writing in my absence. The one where Caleb was the family's crowning achievement, the chosen son who rose above his challenges with a little help from mom and dad. The golden child with the golden future. It wasn't just a lie. It was erasure. So I did something I hadn't done in months. I logged back into Facebook. There they were. A dozen new posts from my mom in the last week alone. Photos of Caleb with captions like "so proud of our boy" and "debt-free and thriving." My dad had even posted a video of Caleb giving a toast at some family barbecue, thanking his incredible parents for helping him build his life from the ground up. I scrolled for 20 minutes. There wasn't a single mention of me. Not one. It was like I'd been quietly deleted from the family narrative. And that's when the idea first took root. I didn't want to humiliate them. Not yet, anyway. I didn't want some dramatic confrontation with shouting and slammed doors. That would make me look bitter, petty, like the forgotten son lashing out for attention. No, I needed something elegant, subtle, a seed of doubt, a whisper that turned into a conversation that shifted how everyone saw the story they'd been fed for the last year. But to do that, I needed proof. Not just of the favoritism. That part was easy, but of the discrepancy, the choices they made, the things they said when they thought I wasn't listening, the way they dismissed me when I wasn't useful to their narrative. I didn't want revenge that made me look like a victim. I wanted something quieter, smarter. So I started collecting emails, texts, Screenshots of the Facebook posts. That smug message Caleb had sent me, thanking me for the job link, completely oblivious to how he'd leapfrogged over me with our father's help. Old family group chats where I'd ask for advice and get ignored, while Caleb would get 20 heart emojis for posting a picture of his sandwich. Then I got creative. I remembered that when Caleb started his job, I helped him set up his LinkedIn profile. We used my laptop, the old one that died, yes, but I'd backed up some files before it completely crashed. One of those was a saved login sheet with auto-filled passwords. I checked, cautiously, and bingo, I was still logged into his dummy Gmail account, the one he'd used to sign up for job alerts. And that inbox was a goldmine. Dozens of emails forwarded by our dad. Job listings, networking events, company contacts, all sent directly to Caleb with little notes like, "You'd be perfect for this," and "Talk to Rick. He said send your resume ASAP." Some of the listings matched the exact ones I'd shared with both of them earlier that year. I'd send something to our family group chat. No one would respond, and 2 days later, my dad would quietly forward it to Caleb with a personal note. But the one that really stung? An email chain where my dad attached my actual resume, the one I'd given him for feedback, and told a recruiter that Caleb was a strong fit for the position. Not me. Caleb. He just swapped out the name and contact info. I sat there staring at the screen for a long time. I wasn't just overlooked. I was repurposed. That's when I decided I wouldn't just expose the truth. I'd rewrite the narrative entirely. And to do that, I needed a stage. The party was the obvious choice, but again, showing up and starting drama would backfire. My parents had always painted me as stoic, independent, the one who didn't like being fussed over. That image made it easy for them to forget me, to justify Caleb being the center of everything. If I came in loud and emotional, it would just reinforce the story they'd already told. So I chose a different route. I RSVP'd yes to the party under a fake name. A +1 for Caleb. Someone from work. Someone they'd never met. Then I reached out to someone I knew they had met once, briefly, at a graduation barbecue 2 years ago. Her name was Priya. We'd gone to college together. Brilliant mechanical engineer. Funny, sharp, not afraid to speak her mind. We weren't close friends, but we'd done a couple of projects together and kept in touch via LinkedIn. I remembered her because she didn't like Caleb at all. She was also one of the lead developers at a green tech startup that had recently made headlines for receiving a huge round of funding. I messaged her, explained the situation, and asked if she'd be interested in doing me a strange, slightly theatrical favor. She didn't hesitate. "Absolutely," she wrote back. "I owe you one anyway. You covered for me when I bombed that thermofluids quiz." So we came up with a plan. She would attend the party as Ria, a fictional recruiter for a fictional engineering company, a firm I quickly designed a fake website for using a free builder and stock photos. It looked real enough. Clean. Professional. Vague. She would show up and make polite conversation with my parents. Ask leading questions. Mention my name casually. Talk about my work, my designs, my rising profile in the freelance community. I gave her just enough real details to sprinkle in so it would sound authentic, references to my clients, project types, freelance sites. A whisper campaign dressed up in business casual networking. The goal wasn't to blow up the party. The goal was to plant a seed. To make them wonder, wait, is Josh actually doing better than we thought? Because if there's one thing my parents valued more than Caleb's charm, it was appearances. If they thought I was struggling, they could comfortably pity me. But if they thought I was thriving without them, that would rattle something deeper. And once that crack appeared, I could wedge it open. But I didn't stop there. I needed to control the narrative outside of the party, too. So I revamped my LinkedIn profile. Updated every detail. Added project links, testimonials from satisfied clients, even logos from a few startups I'd contracted for. I messaged former professors, asking for endorsements. I started posting short articles, nothing flashy, just clean, well-written thoughts on freelance engineering, small space cooling solutions, and efficient CAD workflows. People noticed. One post went semi-viral in the engineering space. Just a short video showing a design-to-print process I'd refined, with a clever caption, "When you can't afford shortcuts, you learn how to build better bridges." It got shared. A lot. I knew my mom would see it eventually. She still followed me, even if she never liked or commented on anything. And then, I dropped the final piece. I created a new email address. A generic-sounding professional one. Then I wrote a message and sent it to my father. Subject: Opportunity, referred by Josh Henson. Hi, Mr. Henson. My name is Raymond, and I'm part of a startup looking for residential HVAC consultants to advise on a compact filtration system we're developing for low-income housing. Josh mentioned your name and said you'd be an excellent fit for a contract-based position. Let me know if this is something you'd be open to. Raymond, founder, True Circuits. The startup was fake. The offer was fake. But the praise? That was real. And I knew how my dad would react. You see, he didn't just love Caleb. He loved being right about Caleb. And he hated feeling left out. He hated the idea of being irrelevant. The moment he read that email, a message implying that I, the solo act, the quiet one, had connections and influence he didn't know about, I knew it would needle him. Because it meant the script had flipped, and I had become the son he should have invested in. I waited. 3 days passed. Then 4. And then, right on cue, I got a text from my mom. Hi, sweetheart. I saw your article. So impressive. Are you coming to the party after all? Would love to catch up. And just like that, the narrative began to shift. But I wasn't done. The real reveal, the actual moment everything broke, would come at the party. I didn't go to the party. I dressed like I might. Clean shirt, ironed pants, polished shoes. I sat on the edge of my bed and tied my laces with slow, deliberate movements. Not because I was indecisive, but because I wanted to feel it. I wanted to sit in that quiet, knowing I had finally done what no one else in my family thought I was capable of, shift the entire balance of power without ever raising my voice. At 5:30 p.m., just when guests would be arriving, I placed my phone face down on the nightstand, turned off notifications, and went out for dinner alone. I didn't need to be there in person. The wheels were already in motion. Let me paint the scene as it was later described to me by 2 different sources. One, my friend Priya, posing as Riya, and the other, my old neighbor Marlene, who had no idea what she was walking into. The venue was nice. Too nice for what the event actually was, a second celebration for something Caleb didn't even earn. It was held at a swanky rooftop lounge downtown, complete with faux gold accents, champagne towers, and a DJ in a velvet blazer playing top 40 remixes that no one over 35 understood. My parents had gone all out. Again, my mom wore a navy dress with silver heels. Dad sported his fancy sports coat that he only pulled out for weddings. Caleb, of course, wore a tailored suit and sunglasses indoors, because that's who he was now. There were speeches. My mom opened the night by gushing about Caleb's unparalleled work ethic and resilience through adversity. Dad followed up with a story about how proud he was that Caleb had rebuilt himself after college and navigated the working world without shortcuts. Somewhere in the back, Marlene reportedly raised an eyebrow. Then Caleb took the mic and did what Caleb always did best, soaked in the attention like sunlight. He thanked everyone, toasted to the future, praised Mom and Dad, even cracked a joke about how Josh couldn't make it tonight, but I'm sure he's doing something solo and mysterious. Cue polite laughter. And that's when Priya made her entrance. Dressed in a sleek navy pantsuit and armed with a flawless cover story, she mingled with the crowd for 20 minutes before gently steering her way toward my parents. They didn't recognize her, not from graduation, not from Facebook. To them, she was a polished stranger with a warm smile and an air of corporate confidence. She introduced herself as Riya, a recruiting manager at Alto Forge Dynamics, the fictional engineering firm I had mock-built for this very purpose. My mom, always eager to network, latched on immediately. "Oh, are you hiring?" she asked, eyes lighting up. "My son Caleb is an engineer. He's just brilliant. Everyone says so." Riya nodded graciously. "That's great. Actually, I came tonight hoping to meet Josh. We've been following his work for months now. Really impressive stuff." There was a pause, a beat of confusion. "My other son," Mom said, trying to cover the slip. "Yes, he's very quiet. Does a lot on his own. Not much for parties." Riya smiled. "Understandable. I just assumed he'd be here. He's been making waves in the freelance circuit lately. That viral LinkedIn post. The cooling module design. Brilliant." My dad, sensing something slipping out of his control, leaned in. "What exactly is it you do at Alto Forge?" "Oh, I head our engineering acquisitions team. We scout talent for specialized design work, contract to hire roles, project-based consulting. We're always looking for innovators who can solve real-world problems under pressure. Josh has that quality. The silence that followed, according to Marlene, was thick enough to chew. Then Rhea added the final twist. In fact, our CEO has been using one of Josh's prototypes in her home testing lab. He designed it for a friend's startup, True Circuits, I think. Small HVAC consultancy doing community housing work. And just like that, the fake startup I created, the one I referred my dad to, entered the conversation from the other side. My dad's eyes narrowed. He recognized the name. He knew exactly what she was referring to. He'd replied to Raymond about that gig 2 weeks ago and never heard back. He'd even mentioned it to Caleb as a maybe, thinking it was beneath him. Now here was someone talking about it like it was a real company with serious connections. Rhea kept going, casually, as if unaware of the growing tension. Josh is really one of those people who doesn't need a spotlight. But he's respected. Quiet power, you know? Rare in his generation. By then, people nearby were listening. Guests had turned. Some cousins. A few neighbors. Even Caleb looked vaguely uncomfortable now, his grip tightening around a champagne flute. Someone asked, "Wait, what company does Josh work for again?" And Rhea, ever so politely, replied, "He's independent. Built his own firm, essentially. Collaborates with multiple startups. His client list is, well, impressive." That was enough. It didn't explode like a firework. There was no screaming, no dramatic reveal, just pressure. A slow, creeping shift in atmosphere. The golden glow around Caleb dimmed, pixel by pixel, as a different image began to form in everyone's mind. My dad made a joke. Tried to pivot. Well, you know how Josh is. Always off doing something strange and secretive. And Rhea replied, cool as ice. Or maybe he just didn't feel the need to advertise his success. Then she smiled, thanked them for their time, and walked away, right past Caleb, who didn't even make eye contact. I got the full recap the next morning over coffee with Priya, who had returned the borrowed pantsuit and brought me a thank you pastry for letting her be chaotic neutral for a night. We laughed about how perfectly the whole thing had played out. No yelling, no accusations, just truth. Delivered by the right person at the right moment, in a room full of people my parents cared way too much about impressing. That afternoon, the text started. Mom, sweetheart, can we talk? Dad, we didn't know you were doing so well. Why didn't you say something? Caleb, did you send someone to mess with the party? That recruiter was weird. I didn't respond for 3 days. When I finally did, I kept it simple. To Mom and Dad, I didn't think you were interested. You only seem to celebrate wins when you're the ones handing them out. To Caleb, nope. She wasn't sent. She just saw the real story. That's not on me. They didn't reply. For weeks. Then one day, I got a letter in the mail. From my parents. Handwritten. Apologizing, in a roundabout way. They didn't admit to favoritism. They didn't even mention the loans. But the tone was different. Softer. Less self-assured. My mom said she'd been reflecting. My dad said he was proud of me, even if we didn't always say it right. I didn't need the letter, but I kept it anyway. The revenge wasn't in destroying them. It was in reclaiming the narrative. They couldn't ignore me anymore. Couldn't erase me from family stories or Facebook posts. Because now, they're friends, neighbors, co-workers, they knew. And no amount of parties or praise for Caleb could cover up the simple truth. I succeeded without them. I didn't need their money. I didn't need their spotlight. All I needed was the chance to build my own stage. And I did. So when the next family gathering came around, a 4th of July barbecue hosted by my aunt, I showed up. Not to gloat. Not to rub it in. Just to exist. To be seen. And I was. People came up to me. Asked about my projects. My clients. My work. Caleb tried to one-up me a few times, but the magic was gone. People smiled politely, then turned back to me. My parents were awkward, but polite. My mom asked if I'd bring a design portfolio next time. My dad asked if I could take a look at a ventilation issue in their guest bathroom. I said I'd think about it. And that was that. No fireworks. No shouting. Just a quiet reversal. One I had built, word by word, move by move. And as I stood by the grill, sipping lemonade and watching Caleb scroll through his phone with furrowed brows, I realized something. They didn't throw me a party, but they'd never forget the one I didn't attend. And I didn't need balloons or banners to make my point. I was the celebration. I just let them figure it out too late.